the Always On Point podcast with Kristen Ambos. Today, I'm super excited to bring you Amanda Furman from Coldwell Banker Real Estate Group. Not only is she a tenured realtor, she's also a very tenured investor. So
it's kind of you.
Yeah, right? It is crazy what you can do in such a small period of time. And I think that you have shown the likes of that to just about everybody who is around you, and how you can change the world, especially in your world, in such a short period of time with big impacts.
Yep.
And don't always think it comes at a huge expense to yourself, right? That expense maybe more so looks like sweat equity.
Yeah, a lot of that.
A lot of that.
Yes.
So today, thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us. Super excited to have you. So just tell us a little bit about yourself to start.
Well, my name's Amanda.
Yeah.
I have been a realtor since 2018, and through real estate was introduced to property investing.
Yes.
I grew up being on the opposite side of property investing. My parents rented for a majority of my childhood. So it was a new concept to me, but one that I was really intrigued by. And 2018 was our first investment property, which was a flip.
So you did that all in the same year you started real estate?
Yes.
Crazy.
I did.
I'm just putting that together now.
I am too.
I knew it was close, but I didn't realize it was within the same year.
Yes.
So you came in guns blazing, like, I'm changing all of this.
I mean, I didn't.
But
honestly,
I was gonna say,
I didn't.
Yeah.
I came into real estate. It was my second choice coming into new
Isn't that
career.
crazy?
I had stayed home for 10 years and was just ready for a career again. I had been a teacher. I tried nursing before real estate, and it was just, I didn't want to do 4 more years of school. I had already spent 5 years.
Fair.
And then I thought, well, okay, let's try real estate. My cousin's husband, who is with Coldwell, had been trying to get me to be a realtor for a long time. So I'm like, oh, let's give it this shot. And then it took off, and then so did real estate investing.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. So I remember the first time I met you when you were just starting, and there was a spark about you that was really intrigued with wanting to learn. Hopefully, maybe that came a little bit from your education background with where you were the teacher, now you're the student, right? Mm-hmm. And I always say that's one of my biggest things in this industry is I can't learn enough, which I do think keeps me on my toes a lot, because I'm never settled with what's going on right now. Yep. I want to know what's coming. I want to know what's going. I want to know the whys behind it and how things are all put into place. And I feel like I saw that spark with you that very first day with where are the whys and how can we expand on this, and just your mind going a million miles an hour.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more about that if you can.
So I'm definitely a curious achiever.
Yep.
I have a drive to learn more, and a lot of the learning comes from like, what can I do next?
Yeah.
What can we do next? So that was actually part of my childhood that I'm just starting to kind of like realize now. Long story medium, there was a program called TAG when I was in school, Talented and Gifted.
Yes,
Okay?
yep.
So all of the TAG kids in the district came to my school Thursday afternoons, and my cousin Abby, who was like my sister growing up, was in this program. She went to a different school, but she was in the TAG program. So Thursday afternoon, she was at my school, and it killed me that she was in my building and I couldn't be by her. So I nominated myself for the TAG program.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. It always amazes me how similar our stories are from whenever we talk, and we go in more and more. So full disclosure, Amanda and I have talked about our pasts and how aligned they are. And so we called it just gifted and talented. Mm-hmm. So basically opposite of what you guys did. I was not in the gifted and talented. I like to talk more than I liked to learn. Big shocker. And my brother was in gifted and talented. And so we were in the same school, but I was always like, well, how come he gets to do that and I don't? Mm-hmm. So similar, yet different, because I didn't understand that he was just like a super genius and I wasn't at the time. So, you know what I'm saying? So I get it. So yeah, keep going. Sorry.
No, you should have nominated yourself.
I should have. I just didn't even think to do that. I love it.
So I remember the teacher that proctored the test to get into the program said, well, I've never had a student nominate themselves before. So I took the test. And it came back, and I was gifted in creativity and leadership. And I remember thinking, I don't even know what those two things are, but I'm in.
Right.
So I then became part of the TAG program. And again, like, it's just something that I've always had inside myself where it's like, well, why not me?
Yes.
Why not me? And yeah, that's kind of, that story describes my personality.
I'm a really, really big fan of Why Not Me. I had a leader probably about 8 to 10 years ago that said, why not you? And I looked at him like, you're right, why not? And then that changed the trajectory of my career because I no longer look at it as I can't. I look at it as exactly that. Why, if I want it, why not me?
Yep.
So phenomenal. And I hope somebody out there who's just hearing that thinks the same. Why not you too? Anyone can do anything. They truly can if they put their minds to it.
Yep. A lot of times I think it's a coping mechanisms for ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we like to think other people have it, whatever it is. They're blessed. They have more money than I do. They have more resources than I do.
Absolutely.
And my big thing that I always tell myself is there are people a lot more dumber than me that have figured this out. I usually say more stupider because it sounds stupid.
Right.
But like, you know, the other people have done this and they have less resources, less knowledge, less skill, and they're doing it. Why not me?
Why not me? 100% agree. I love it and still live by it. So very, very fun fact of achievement is you can, no matter what.
Absolutely.
Just find the resources, find the people, find the being within you.
Yep.
And so speaking of that, you and I have talked often about how you can become an investor without a lot of resources.
Correct.
Right? So why not you being the next big investor?
Yep.
And that really, I also remember talking to you, okay, how do we do this? What do we get started? What's the right way to do it? So just a little more in-depth about me. I've come from a family of investors, starting with my grandfather, and we invested, they got me into the understanding of investing young. What you're doing with your kids. I was the kid that was scraping paint, pulling up carpet, washing windows, all of that. Like it was a family affair. And there started my love of it. So I love that you get your family into it. Like if you follow Amanda on any of our social media platforms, you'll see that this is a family affair for you guys. The kids are just involved, which I think is amazing. But what did it feel like for that first property you bought and going into it? And what do you feel like those who are thinking about investing need to know?
So it was overwhelming. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it.
Yep.
But I think a lot of people think you need to have all of this money, like all these cash reserves to get into real estate investing, and you don't. We started with a home equity loan. Yep. $70,000 home equity loan. Maybe it was 80, something like that.
Yeah.
But most people right now, if you have owned your home for 3 or more years, you probably have enough for a down payment on the property.
Completely agree with you. And I talk to clients all the time of what can I do to utilize this equity to further my position if they don't want to move.
Yep.
You know, so that what a great way to do that.
Yep. So that's what we did. We took out a home equity line of credit and we bought our first property, which we knew going into it was going to be a flip, just numbers wise. So we've never done it before. I was all excited to like pick out the colors and the finishes. And then pretty soon I was painting 1,400 square feet of property and pulling paint out of my hair. We were plastering. We had a ton of support from family too.
Yes.
I had aunts that were over helping clean, helping pull staples out of the floor. My Uncle Gene, who has since passed, was in we would not have been able to do if it wasn't for him. We didn't realize it going in,
right?
But he was just always there to like show us things and teach us things. And we did not make a ton of money. You
mean you didn't get rich off of one property?
We did not.
Okay.
I think we're used to seeing like HGTV and all these property investing shows where they make $150,000. We made 30.
Okay, but no definitely something not to scoff at.
Correct.
A decent amount.
If you broke that down to an hourly rate, it would probably been about $15 an hour per my husband and I. We would be there. We had little kids at the time who couldn't be left home alone. So, I mean, we would be there till 3 a.m, and then the next night we would shift, and the next person, he would go there until 3 a.m, and we both had regular jobs. Like, it was absolutely a sacrifice. It was not glamorous. It was not easy, but we did it.
So you didn't have on full glamour makeup and hair and went and renovated a house in 2 days?
Did not. No, I was not wearing my stilettos there.
Yes.
It was definitely
there's
process.
a space for HGTV. No doubt it puts ideas in your mind, but the reality that you and I both know is that's the glamour of the TV world. The reality is it does take that equity to get that going.
Yep.
And that's exactly what you did. Instead of hiring it out, you and your husband did it yourself.
Correct. Yep.
Love it.
So we did a flip because we didn't have enough money to put into a property without getting it back, if that makes sense.
Total.
So then we took that $30,000 that we made, and that was the money that we used to purchase our first rental property.
Okay. So you have done both, just so that the consumer and the listeners know too, you both have long-term, short-term, and flips you've done.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And what do you think you use to determine, I know the numbers are obviously a big part of it, but when you look at a property, are you thinking right when you're looking at it, that one's going to be long-term, or are you saying to yourself, okay, this time we want to do a long-term property, so you change the parameters of what you're looking for?
It's a really good question. So I approach each property differently.
Yes.
We are starting to backpedal away from doing flips.
Sure.
Full disclosure, it's just because we don't necessarily need that capital now.
Sure.
But in the future, I stayed home for 10 years. I had 0 retirement funds.
Yep.
So now we're sort of looking at our investment properties as fueling retirement.
Yes.
Because I had nothing.
Which is amazing. It's a passive income then. But I don't want to go into a full retirement conversation, but I think you just touched on something, because in the industry I'm in as well, you don't get massive 401k plans. Mm-hmm. The industry, my husband worked for a very small company. There wasn't a massive 401k plan. So we are two people who are also now doing everything we can in our, middle-aged selves to set ourselves up for retirement, because we're making up for lost time. I'd be willing to bet, though, that's the majority of a lot of people. Instead of, I feel like there's a smaller portion that actually have their retirement all set up by the time they're in their mid-40s, that they don't have to worry and can coast. More of them are like you and I.
Absolutely.
How do I set myself up to retire now in a way that I can? Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it's so important to just note that.
Yep.
Because this can be a retirement. This absolutely can be a long-term goal too.
Absolutely.
And a passive income long-term. Okay, so keep going. Sorry.
No, and if you think, just going off that, if you think about, so I'm 42. Yep. I'll probably never retire, full disclosure, but I don't want to work in the capacity that I am forever. So the average commercial loan for an investment property is a 20-year amortization.
Yes.
So even if you don't buy your first property until you're in your 40s, by the time those true retirement years come around, that property is going to be free and clear, and it's just going to be a cash cow for you.
Couldn't have said it better myself, and that's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. Is lining yourself up. It's not too late.
Yep.
And typically, the commercial loans don't come with a massive prepayment penalty after you've had them for a handful of years. So you can still pay them off in 10 to 15 years if you want to pay them a little bit more aggressively to speed that process up. Mm-hmm. It's a choice you can make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is nice.
Options
you can
are
take
good.
the full 20 or you can pay it off sooner. So that's all, just full disclosure for anyone out there who's thinking about investing and it just isn't really sure what this looks like. So thank you for covering that, because that is a big piece of it.
Of course.
Yeah.
So to me, real estate investing is like a triple dip. When I look for a property, I'm looking for 3 things to happen. We like to buy properties that are, probably won't qualify for traditional financing.
Okay.
And that usually means they need work.
Yep.
Lots of cosmetic work and often lots of mechanical work as well, structural work.
Sure.
So that it's a risk, but I've kind of educated myself over the years, just learning on myself in our investment properties to see what is something I'm willing to take a risk on, what is something I'm not. So we buy the property and then we fix it up. So there we have instant equity in the property. So let's say we buy it for $100,000, we put 30 into it, and at the end it's worth, 180. There we have $50,000 of equity that we can then tap into and use that money to purchase the next one. So that's one form.
Sure. So a domino effect.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And once you get started, it's just easy
You're
to
always
keep
thinking
rolling.
of the next one.
Yep.
I agree.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's the first part of the trifecta. The second part is going to be your cash flow monthly. So if you're keeping it as a rental, you want to make sure that rents outpace the cost to keep the property. Okay.
Yes.
So your mortgage, the taxes, any maintenance that you need to do, interest, all of that. You want to make sure that you have some sort of cash flow.
Okay.
And then over time, real estate just naturally increases in value.
Yes.
So then, at the end, you're going to have this asset that just continues to appreciate over time. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah. And I think it's smart. It's also, I think, determining if this is a short or the long-term goal, right?
Yep.
Like you said, you use flips for your short-term goals, and then you're using long and short-term rentals for your long-term goals. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's just smart, understanding how to get started and what this looks like.
Yep.
And, what goal are you really trying to achieve with real estate? It's a great way to diversify your portfolio so you're not tapped into all of one thing, right? So like if the stock market crashes, you still okay over here. Those things aren't typically going to happen. Have they happened in the past? Yes. But if you hold these, real estate long term, it always comes back around.
Correct.
Always. Mm-hmm. And, it's only when you're holding it short term that there's potential to lose, or a little bit more potential to lose, if you will.
Yep.
And so when you're doing this, I would venture to bet it's even smarter to work with a realtor that understands the goals you're trying to meet and the properties you're trying to buy versus somebody who's never been an investor or a real estate agent who's never been an investor or doesn't understand investing, right? Because it's a different ballgame to what you're looking for.
Oh my gosh. Night and day compared to traditional real estate purchasing a property for you to use personally.
Yeah.
Just knowing rents, what does a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,200 square foot property in De Pere rent for? That's huge.
Yeah.
Knowing construction costs. If you are looking to get into real estate investing and you are working with a realtor that does not have, isn't investing themselves, doesn't have a piece of the pie, I feel like it could be very detrimental because it all comes down to numbers and what your goals are. And if who you're working with doesn't know the numbers, it's going to be really hard for you to figure it out on your very first one.
I completely agree. And because there's so many what ifs, this is where essentially too, for sale by owners could crush you if you're doing an investment property. And they are supposed to disclose everything, right?
Yep.
They're supposed to. Just like you're supposed to tell the truth on stand, right? I know that's extreme. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to, but does everybody? No, they don't. Mm-hmm. And so you having an eye for what to look for, especially when it comes to the mechanicals.
Yeah.
Reading how old or how new is that furnace system? What does that roof look like? Because as an investor, you're going in, these things are expensive.
Yep.
And you want to make sure, especially if you're holding it long term, it should be short term anyway, but long term, that you are putting yourself in a position to win. Maybe you have to spend a little bit more up front to keep the cost down later on. Yep. Something to think about.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people don't know, there's a bow in the foundation downstairs that's not braced. What does that look like for cost?
And our brains go to worst case scenario,
Yep.
right? I actually have a really good example of that with a foundation. I had some first time investors. We were looking at a property. There was some cracking in the foundation. And I always use the disclosure, I'm not a home inspector.
Right.
I'm not a foundation specialist, but I have experience with this.
Yeah.
It cost us $3,600. We had to put in 3 braces. And long story medium again, we got a quote back from a basement repair company, and it was $4,000. In their head, this was going to be $40,000. It's also why that property was available, because other people saw that and again went to worst case scenario.
Oh, and they went, oh, we're not buying this. It's going to crumble in. It's going to crush in. And now somebody just put in a few $1,000s and probably gained a ton of equity because it was sitting.
Absolutely. And we were able to negotiate that
Heck
$4,000 that it cost as well.
That's well, hello.
Yep.
People can actually negotiate that stuff too. I love it.
Yep.
Sometimes. Listen, it's always worth the ask, right? You don't know unless you ask.
Absolutely.
And having those types of things in your back pocket, or an agent who understands that and has those people that they work with. Obviously, you've probably got a Rolodex, if that's even a thing anymore, of people who, you trust to work on properties because you've had them. I know I do.
Yep.
Right. And so if I'm a brand new investor and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm buying my first house, I want an agent who's going to not only be able to help me with what I'm going to need to pick out the things they see so I can be fully prepared, which, by the way, I just have to say is amazing that you do that for your, when you're a buyer's agent, right? And you can talk to them about the things that they might need to do, but still be able to show them what on a grandiose scale this property could really give back to them on. Pointing out the issues, but still saying this is doable. All of this is, and understanding them, you giving them hope in that. And that's amazing.
Everything is figure outable. It's just a matter of, does it make sense financially?
Been one of my favorite words lately is figure outable. Adam Schnabel and Weta and I said that not a couple weeks ago. And now that you brought it up again, figure outable is who you want to work with for everything. Because don't you feel like this industry is problem solving at its best?
Oh, absolutely. And therapy.
Yep. Therapy, problem solving, all of it. So now on a personal note, and it's going to be different for everybody, but on a personal note for you, what's your most favorite type of property to invest in?
Mixed use.
Love it. Okay, you said that without even thinking twice. So tell us why.
Mixed use property is a property, at least my definition of it, that has commercial and residential components of it. So we own a couple buildings in downtown Appleton where we have 2 commercial businesses that lease from us, our guests. And then we have 2 apartments that are above those.
Sure.
So I love the commercial side of it because these people, for the most part, like this is their business, their livelihood. They take care of things. They will upgrade the building themselves.
They treat it like it's their own.
Yes, exactly.
Because it's their brand on the line.
Yep.
Right? It's their reputation. Okay, so that's a great point. Love that.
And it also, like, real estate ebbs and flows. So there might be times when the residential side is down a little bit, but then you have the commercial side to lift you up, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So I really love the complexity, I guess, and the options that multi-use gives you.
That's really great for the listeners out there who maybe thought, oh, commercial, I don't know, or there's a lot of commercial buildings available right now for purchase. And so when you get something like that mixed use, what a way to diversify your diversification.
Yeah, it's learning, right?
Right.
Like I love that learning aspect, like you hit on before.
Yes.
I never would have thought. I just had a dream to own a building in downtown Appleton, and I really didn't think about the options that it would give us in investing.
And the benefits.
For sure. But I do also have to talk about the negative parts of it.
Please, because I think that is just as important. And I say the same thing when I'm talking to buyers, whether it's the right time to buy or rent. I don't try to get them in just to buy because maybe it's not the right time.
Yep.
Maybe they need to rent for another year or 2 and then get in, and that's okay. They should never feel like that's a bad thing because there are some negatives to owning.
For sure.
So let's hear what your negatives are on that.
So everything is more expensive.
Okay.
So for example, last summer, the 2 air conditioning units for our downtown buildings went out. They're rooftop AC units.
Yep.
We got a quote, and they're older. They're at the end of life.
Yeah.
We got a quote to replace them of $40,000.
Yes, that's a lot of money.
Threw up a little bit when I
Yep,
I mean,
that's
I
a lot of money.
literally felt sick.
Yeah.
Right now we were able to put about $3,000 into them,
Okay.
and they lasted us the rest of summer.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna keep my fingers crossed that this summer it happens. But again, with so much, we have so much equity in those buildings. It's not like I have to have $40,000 cash to just dole out. We
Sure.
would just take out an equity loan on those properties to
To help pay for them.
Yep.
That's a great point, because then now what you're saying is the truth behind it. Equity breeds more equity, breeds more equity,
Yep.
breeds more equity.
Yep.
And so every time you're investing, especially when you're sweat equity, as much as you can be in those buildings, you're growing that equity. Not only that, now you've been investing for 6 or 7 years. And for those 6 or 7, 5, 6, 7,
Yep.
something like that, enough years.
Yep.
But since you've been doing that, now everything's risen in value, because we're in an area where the appreciation stays and has stayed stable around 5 to 7%, depending on your price point. Is that the same in commercial as well?
I think commercial fluctuates a little bit differently.
Sure. Yep.
I honestly, I don't have enough time under my belt to probably truly speak to
I
that.
love that answer, though, because you're not promising one thing or another. You're not sure, and that's okay, because it's too soon.
Yep. I think it really depends upon the area you buy into.
Hands down agree, as well as what type of business is in your building.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That to me would make a big deal too.
Yep.
Or a big difference.
And so again, in the investing side of things, when you're looking at a value of a property, the rents that are being brought in are a big factor. It's not,
Yep.
oh, this is a $400,000 commercial building. It's, well, what do these leases look like? How
Right.
much money is being brought in? Because that changes. If your payment is, I'm just making up numbers, $2,500 for a commercial building, but the rents that are coming in are $6,000 a month, that building is worth more. It's the same building, but it's worth more because of the money it's generating.
Heck, yes. And you just kind of gave me a thought too, which would also help, because if I have a rental property, like for me, I might buy a rental property, a single family that doesn't generate a ton of monthly income, because I'm looking at it for the longevity and for passive income down the road, paying it off anyway, those types of things. But for a commercial building, where I just needed to make a little bit money to cover the maintenance on it and things like that, without any out of pocket. On a commercial building, you're going to generate more rents, but then things are going to be more expensive. So you're not going to want to take that $3,000 or $4,000 of income and spend it. You're going to want to put it in a little stockpile.
Yep.
So you're okay when things go out, and you can pay that equity line on it, or you can pay down anything. But then now you take it and buy another one, and then there's more equity, more rent. So you're essentially just exacerbating the potential of what you have there for both equity, income, long-term, everything.
Yep. Once the ball starts rolling, it's a lot easier to kick it further and further down. And by that, I mean just purchasing more and accumulating more wealth. One thing that I really want to hit on, I like to think I do things differently, especially with residential, is I always think to myself, humans before homes. I think we lose in residential investing the humanity that's behind it often.
Completely agree.
And I am on a mission to change that. So I'm looking for other people potential investors.
They tell us more. My ears are up.
I'm looking for other potential investors that want to do things differently than they have been done. So I tell our guests, we call them guests. I hate the word tenant. I hate the word landlord. I think they just have a lot of preconceived prejudices about
Negative connotation.
Yes.
Yep.
So I tell our guests, hey, I need you just as much as you need me.
Right.
Like in order for me to be successful, you have to be successful. And when you think of what happens inside a person's home, whether they own it or they rent it, like this is where, people are getting letters that their child was accepted to their dream college.
Right.
This is where we're receiving phone calls that somebody that we love has passed away. Like if you think about the magnitude of what happens inside
personal.
those walls, it's like, it's mind boggling. And I provide those spaces to humans.
Yes.
And I never want to lose sight of that. So I communicate with our guests monthly. They don't reach out to me. I reach out to them.
Love it.
I just want to say like, hey, anything that you need, anything that needs to be fixed, just want to make sure that you're happy. Just want to make sure you're comfortable. We give, little gifts, and like we just dropped off Christmas gifts. We could do pumpkins, like just little things so people know like we're here for you. We're not just like collecting a check from you. And I'm sure I will get burned on that at some point in my life. I know I will. But it has worked out so well for us to have that relationship with our guests.
Very, very much so. I love it. I have a few tidbits of what I can do better. We have a pretty good relationship with our tenants too, but you just gave me so many ideas of what's better because and what dawned on me is we have a tenant and, they were like, we love the home you allow us to live in, or we just want to make your home ours. And so many times landlords look at it as though it's an investment, not a home. Mm-hmm. And they look at it as though it's our home that they're trying to make better.
Yeah.
And so it's a special thing. And I love that you do that because there are people who would prefer to own and just can't for whatever reason. Yep. It doesn't mean we should treat them like they can't.
Of course. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We're
And
all humans.
I think you nail what a great way to kind of segue into, the end of this conversation, because it's a really good, really happy note as being a guest. Mm-hmm. And treating our tenants like they're guests, because that's what they are.
They absolutely are.
You
and
would treat them that way when it's a short-term rental, so why not a long-term? What's the difference?
Real estate investing is the only industry that I can think of where we do not ask our consumers for feedback.
You're right.
Like that's insane to me.
Yeah. And we should have that.
Absolutely.
We should have that.
I said absolutely a lot in this podcast.
That's okay. It's a good word. It's a good word. We like it. Well, I know we could sit here and talk all day about investing. We may have to pick up part 2 down the road here. I can't thank you enough for coming in and sharing the reality, the goods, the bads, the things to think about. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily bad. It's just making sure you know what those things look like so you can be as prepared as possible. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for that and for what you're doing for the communities and the properties you own. If any of you are looking to get a hold of an investor who is also a realtor and a damn good one at that, please contact Amanda Furman. We'll have all of her information for you here. And we really enjoyed having you on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. We look forward to seeing you on the next one here at Always On Point with Kristen Ambos.